Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. This episode, we have Netflix 36th film. It's the 2019 sports drama High Flying Bird. It's directed by Steven Soderbergh. It stars Andre Holland, Zazie Beetz, Melvin Gregg, Sonja Sohn, Zachary Quinto, MacLachlan and Bill Duke. I am Jesse and I am here as your host today for this Netflix original film, which I will be spoiling throughout this episode. So if you haven't seen High Flying Bird, give us a pause, come back later, because we're going to get straight into this, where I run off with my fast flicks, which is a quick little summary of what whole film is about. And this surrounds a lockout during an NBA season, and it highlights the dealings behind the scenes by agents, businesses, and players as well. So as we get into this one, I guess it is a sports film, but very little to do with actual sport in it. I guess there's no sport playing really. It's all about the inside workings of the managers and people that work alongside these players. So if you're interested in this one, give it a watch, because I'm going to talk about some history about this one and how it's put together. And Steven Soderbergh, very, very, very well-known director, and he sort of went through this little bit of a phase in 2018, 2019, where he wanted to use an iPhone as much as possible for his film. So this film, High Flying Bird, was filmed completely on an iPhone 8. And this is the second film that he had done on an iPhone. So he did Unsane as well, which is another film that he completely filmed and edited on an iPhone. So goes in with this. And I think he made sort of some commentary about, moving forward, this is the sort of thing that he'd want to do with his filmmaking, is use the new technology that's available for him. And I guess that led to it being filmed really quickly. It was filmed in and around New York between Feb and March 2018, so really, really quickly. And after the rough cut, 3 hours afterwards, he'd pretty much had this rough cut ready to go after they'd finished filming, which is quite impressive. And he did speak about how Netflix got involved with this film, and Soderbergh said that he'd been in conversations with Netflix during Unsane, which is that film I mentioned before, and when he ended up going in a different way with that film, he said, "Look, I've got this other thing. I'll make sure you get your eyes on it early." And when it was basically finished, he took it to Netflix and they said, "Cool, we'll buy it." And it was as simple as that. And it felt like that the kind of film that this was for him, that the best way for people to see it was to get it on Netflix, which sounds like I'm repeating myself yet again about directors and their relationships with Netflix. And he said it's got a better shot about finding all the people who will like it by being on this service. Otherwise, he didn't really want to see this slow rolling platform release, which can be expensive and bound by the theaters that it's played in. And you can't just go wherever you want. So he felt like he'd rather drop it and have everybody see it all at once, which we see so many times with these films that we've been looking at on this show. The title of the film, so High Flying Bird is the English title. In Greece, it's called Jump to the Top. In Hungary, it's called Soaring Bird. In Japan, it's got a bit of a weird translation called Aim for the Top of Basketball. And in Vietnam, it was called Basketball Superstar. So all these titles go very nicely along with what this film is about. It opened at the Slam Dance Film Festival on the 27th of Jan 2019. A couple of weeks later, on the 7th of Feb, it played at the Film Comment Selects Festival, before the next day hitting Netflix worldwide on the 8th of Feb 2019. Apparently, Steven Soderbergh had about $2 million that he used for this film, and did have 7 nominations at a various variety of film awards ceremonies, but nothing really too special that stands out, and didn't actually win any of them. Anyway, the consensus for this one. So the critics, Rotten Tomatoes, had it at 91% on 134 reviews. So this is certified fresh, very, very high up there. Audience on Rotten Tomatoes, however, on a bit over 100 reviews, had it at 50%. So not as well received by your general movie-going person. IMDb had it at a 6.2 out of 10 on 7,800 reviews, and Letterboxd had about 20,000 people rate it a 3.3 out of 5. So very, very close to what we're seeing there on IMDb. Nothing quite as high as what the critics have said for this one. My early thoughts for this one. So I've seen this one multiple times. I used this in the classroom when I was teaching, and looking at the change in filmmaking techniques and technologies, and especially with this being filmed on an iPhone, I actually was getting memories and scenes from this film confused a little bit with another Netflix original that we looked at a while ago called Amateur. So yeah, I was expecting scenes to pop up, and I'm like, no, that wasn't in this film, and but it didn't take away from my enjoyment of this one. I think that it is a wordy film. There's a lot of dialogue, very dialogue heavy, but quite juicy dialogue, and I think it's well worth a watch if you take the time. It's a short 90-minute runtime, so can easily get through this one quickly, and I would recommend it, and I'll give some reasons now as to why I think. And looking at some characters, Ray is our main character. He's this savvy businessman who knows what he's doing. He's had a passion for basketball, and he knows how to work people. There's never any doubt in his ability to handle a situation or get what he wants out of people. We see at the start there's this, he's sitting out trying to use a credit card to pay for this extravagant meal, and it's declined, but he keeps moving quickly, and he knows exactly what to do, how to handle the situation. No obstacle is a challenge for him. And this is seen through this number one draft pick, basketball draft pick, Eric, who is sort of meant to be managed by him, and he's this young, naive kid who doesn't quite understand this whole this professional sporting world that he's about to join. And there's this other kid, Jamiro, who's sort of in a similar situation that Ray tries to work off as well, and it's like this competition between the two, even though Eric does have that mindset that he knows that at some stage they're probably going to be playing together, they're going to be in this league together, and he does make this comparison between the two, that Jamiro is this kid who is a little bit more well-off, plays organised ball, whereas he's the sort of kid that plays street ball, and he's happy to do things a little bit harder than just use money to get what he needs. A couple of smaller characters, I guess. Sam is Ray's assistant, and she wants to achieve. Strong character. She's they mentioned she graduated at the top of her class, but she can't work with Ray anymore because he doesn't give her the time that she needs. But she still respects him and still communicates with him in a meaningful way that helps him get what he wants as well, I guess. And the last person I'll briefly mention is Spence. He is this moral compass of how black people are being treated throughout this basketball world, I guess. And he's almost this mentor for Ray, and he's this mentor for lots of kids in underprivileged areas. And he's a really nice, stable character throughout, just to remind people, the impact that some of these business decisions that are made can have on real life people. Steven Soderbergh, I'm going to talk briefly about him as the director. He has 46 directing credits, his 55 producing credits. He's a big name, obviously Academy Award winner. The big four of his films on IMDb. So the first one is Sex, Lies and Videotape from 1989. Traffic from 2000, really big film, as well as Erin Brockovich in 2000. And then the other one that he's well known for is that Behind the Candelabra with Matt Damon and I can't remember who else, but that was a HBO show or TV film from 2013, which did quite well. I mentioned briefly before too, Unsane is that film from 2018 he did on his iPhone. I thoroughly enjoy that film too. And the other one that we'll probably discuss at some stage coming up is The Laundromat, which is another Netflix original that he did as well. And I think a lot of his work moving forward, I think he's possibly signed a deal with HBO, and a few of his upcoming features are going to be output through that streaming service in America, obviously, but they may get a cinematic release in other parts of the world. So some scenes that I enjoyed in this one. I think that throughout you see these cutaway scenes with NBA players. So that, they've got Reggie Jackson, Kat, Donovan Mitchell, and it gave a real authenticity to this film, that you've got these NBA players talking about their careers, and then obviously the scenes that these led into sort of reflected what they'd experienced in their own lives. So I really enjoyed those intercuts throughout of the sit-down interviews with these players. The camera work throughout in various scenes, just really good. There's a lot of scenes that a full camera setup with a whole crew just wouldn't be feasible in some of these scenes. You've got these tracking shots through a restaurant where you follow this waitress. You've got these lovely scenes throughout New York City where we just follow Ray, and just having an iPhone on a tripod to follow a character, it just gives you this sense of amazingness that you can manage this on such a small little device. I mentioned Spence before as this moral compass sort of character, and I really liked throughout his references that they were done really subtly, but he made these references, about slavery and the black experience throughout that just reminded you as the audience and the characters about the struggles that they have in this world, and how, and I guess this is probably talking a little bit about the themes that we'll go into soon, but just how they have such little control at times over something that they are the main product of, and that's how they are treated at times as a product. The last thing I'll talk about, just a little bit of a laugh that I had. One funny scene is, Eric has this build up as this number one draft pick player, and to keep in the zone, he's got to make sure that he doesn't have sex before he plays. And there's a scene where he's challenged by this, his nemesis, I guess, Jamiro, and he just says out loud because he wants to play, and he's like, "No, I just had sex," and I had a bit of a laugh. I thought that was quite funny. The only thing that I didn't necessarily like in this one is there's to give a little bit of context to the film about what's going on in the outside world during this lockout. There's these constant television interview scenes in the background explaining this lockout, and I think there's a couple of times in an elevator where they've got a TV in the elevator playing this, and I get that maybe in this type of world and these types of offices that they do have TVs in elevators, but it was just a bit over the top for me, a bit in your face. And that will lead into some themes or some ideas from this one. So I think that this obviously talks a lot about money and power. And it's about business too, and the abuse of this money and power through business. And why do the people in this environment hold the power that they do? Why are black people treated as a commodity? And I think they do this really well, like I mentioned, through the character of Spence. And then obviously that leads into race too, where you've got these black athletes that are dependent on a system which is pretty much run by white rich dudes. And the NBA, they mentioned it integrated so that they could control this situation, and there's more players every year. So these deals that they're trying to, there's more mouths that need to be fed and less money to go around if they do these collective bargaining agreements, which isn't necessarily fair for a lot of people. I think too that the females in this film were very strong. You had Sam, Myra, Jamiro's mum. They're all very, very strong, and it was just nice to see these women who knew what they wanted and knew how to deal with that in what is often seen as a man's world. There's this idea too about disrupting how things are, disrupting the status quo, changing what's the norm, and going from there, and trying to make sure that people are actually looked out for rather than being challenged, and having to challenging things, and rather than putting up with what's there already. I think just taking away from this, obviously, that being filmed on an iPhone, there are times throughout where some of the angles look a little bit weird. The fish lens that he uses at times, it gives you that feel of awkwardness, but you as the viewer get used to it very quickly, and I think it is an amazing feat that he was able to create this whole film on an iPhone. All right, sometimes we jump onto IMDb to look up, people that we may recognize from different things. The first one, there's this David guy. He's a business dude in this, played by Kyle MacLachlan, and he's got that recognizable face. I knew straight away that he was from Desperate Housewives. This was a TV show that I used to watch religiously, and I couldn't remember his character's name, and he was in 96 episodes I checked out, so I should have remembered, but on the show, it was Orson. He was this character that played off Brie Vanderkamp in that show, so Orson was his name, which I felt a lot more comfortable once I could work out what his name in that show was, because it was one of those things that just sat in the back of your mind going, what's his name from that show? So that made me feel happy. And I will wrap this one up now. So I think that, this is a really good sports film. If you like Moneyball, that looks at that film about baseball, that looks more about the business side of things and the numbers side of things, you might enjoy this one as well, because there's the tiniest amount of actual sport in this. It's cleverly put together, and mainly because it's a really good script and they're believable situations. So even though it is fiction, you could see this playing out in real life, and I enjoyed that. So more Soderbergh sports films, please. I'm giving this one a 4 out of 5, which is quite a high one. We are on social media. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram. We pop posts up, so please do try and communicate with us through there if you like. The question I just wanted to ask, so Spence at some stage in this film, he says, you care all the way or you don't care at all. What do you take from this? Do you think that you have to be all in on something to actually commit to it, or can you care a little bit and then be upset with the outcomes of that, or do you have no right to be upset with outcomes of things unless you actually put yourself fully into that situation? So I really like that quote from Spence, and I hope you do too. We're back again for another episode next week, and next week we've got it's a 2019 film. It's the Indian Marathi language film called Firebrand. This is directed by Aruna Raj, and it stars Ujra Jadhav, Sachin Kadikar, and Girish Kulkarni. So yeah, I have no idea what this one's about. Looking forward to it, and hopefully you guys will join me next time to hear that one too. And as usual, thank you for popping along for this one, and if you haven't seen High Flying Bird, hopefully this has convinced you that you might want to check it out, and I will see you soon.